I invite His Excellency William Samoei Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, on behalf of the African Group, to address the Assembly.
Madam President, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the African Group, I extend warm appreciation to you, Madam President, and to the State of Qatar for hosting this historic summit, a moment to renew our shared promise 30 years after Copenhagen to place people at the heart of development. We associate ourselves fully with the statement delivered by the delegation of Iraq on behalf of the Group of 77 and China. Excellencies, 3 decades after the first World Summit on Social Development, the world can point to real progress in reducing poverty, improving food security, expanding education, health, and social protection. Yet, persistent and widening inequality within and among nations continue to erode these gains. Global systems of trade, finance, and technology remain unequal and exclusionary. Poverty, unemployment, and social exclusion have been and remain the defining challenges of our time. Confronting them is not charity, it is justice for humanity. Across many sub-Saharan and sub-regions in Africa and Western Asia, hunger is rising, growth is slowing down, and vulnerability is deepening. Health and education systems are under strain, and energy deficits hold back opportunity. Beyond income, inclusion depends on access to essential services that empower individuals and protect dignity. Universal access to affordable and quality health care is not a luxury. It is a right for every human being. Housing insecurity, manifesting through homelessness, overcrowding, and substandard shelter, continue to breed inequality. As housing costs outpace wages, affordable housing must become a cornerstone of social development. Informal and precarious employment remains yet another of the gravest obstacles to stability and growth, particularly in low and middle income countries where millions live close to the poverty line. Ladies and gentlemen, the digital divide is emerging as one of the greatest barriers of our time. Access to affordable connectivity, access to devices, and digital skills must become universal. Education must include every learner, empower every teacher, and reach every community, including persons with disability. As Africa, we believe that transforming informal sectors, enhancing productive capacity, and expanding access to global markets requires stronger international cooperation in line with the Addis Ababa Action Agenda and the right to development. We therefore call for comprehensive reform of the international financial architecture to make it fair, transparent, and responsive to the needs of developing nations and its people. We urge decisive action on debt distress and progress towards United Nations Framework Convention on International Tax Cooperation. We also underscore our call for a UN Convention in sovereign debt. Distinguished colleagues, the Copenhagen Declaration gave us a timeless framework built on 3 pillars: the eradication of poverty, decent work for all, and social integration. Grounded in equity, solidarity, and human dignity, these pillars remain our compass. We therefore welcome the Doha Declaration on Social Development, a renewed global pledge to translate principle into action and to build cohesive and resilient societies for generations ahead. We commend the co-facilitators, the permanent representative of Morocco and Belgium, for their leadership in guiding this important progress. This summit, distinguished colleagues, must rekindle genuine dialogue, restore trust, and reaffirm multilateralism as the anchor of collective progress. We must amplify the voices of those living in poverty and vulnerability and ensure that developing countries, most of them in Africa, are fairly represented across all multilateral institutions. Accordingly, the African Group reiterates its demand for 2 permanent and 2 non-permanent seats for Africa on the UN Security Council with full rights and privileges. True social development cannot thrive without historical justice and equal representation. The African Union has declared 2025 the year of justice for Africans and the people of African descent through reparations. This is a defining step towards justice and healing for Africa and its diaspora, calling for accountability for the crimes of slavery, colonialization, apartheid, and exploitation that caused lasting human and environmental harm. We also reiterate the importance of the high-level General Assembly meeting in September 2026 to mark the 25th anniversary of the Durban Declaration and Program of Action and invite all partners to support its successful implementation within the second decade for people of African descent. Together, let us envision a future that is inclusive, resilient, and just. A world free of hunger, poverty, disease, racism, and inequality. A world where prosperity is shared, the digital divide is bridged, and trust in multilateralism is renewed. I thank you. Allow me, Madam President, having just addressed this assembly on behalf of the African Group, I now have the honor, with your kind indulgence, to deliver Kenya's national statement. In the years since Copenhagen, the world has made tremendous advances in science, technology, and innovation, transforming lives and transforming economies. Yet amid this progress, poverty, inequality, unemployment, and social exclusion persist, and in far too many places they have deepened. In Kenya, through our bottom-up economic transformation agenda, we have charted a deliberate roadmap to confront these challenges head-on, and I am proud to share a few of its key highlights. We recognize that education is the most powerful equalizer in society. That is why Kenya has fully transitioned to the competence-based education and training system that emphasizes practical skills, innovation, and lifelong learning. Equally, to make higher education equitable, we introduced a student-centered funding model that guarantees access to quality education for every learner, regardless of their social or economic background. In 3 years, we have hired 76,000 new teachers, a number that will reach 100,000 by January 2026, improving the teacher-to-learner ratio from 1 to 45 to 1 to 29, putting us on course to meet UNESCO's 1 to 25 benchmark by 2027. We have also rapidly expanded technical and vocational training institutions across the country, ensuring that learners gain market-ready skills aligned with the needs of industry and entrepreneurship. Beyond education, we're empowering citizens economically through initiatives like the Financial Inclusion Fund, popularly known as the Hustler Fund. To date, the fund has disbursed Kenya shillings 80 billion an equivalent of US dollars 615 million, to 26 million Kenyans, it now accounts for more than 9.5 million repeat borrowers, including 5 million individuals who have successfully restored their creditworthiness through consistent repayment, enabling them not only to re-enter the formal credit market, but also access higher borrowing limits and better financial terms. At the same time, together with partners, we are launching programs such as the National Youth Opportunity Towards Advancement Project. Over the next 5 years, it will reach 1 million young Kenyans, training them in skills that are on demand, financing startups, and enabling access to government procurement opportunities. We are equally committed to protecting the most vulnerable members of our society, including the elderly, orphans, widows, and persons living with disability. Through our National Safety Net program, commonly known as Inua Jamii, what began as a modest monthly support to 500 households has now expanded to reach more than 1.7 million families across the country. Madam President, Excellencies, through the Affordable Housing Program, we are delivering much-needed shelter while at the same time creating jobs and fostering inclusion. Today, over 230,000 housing units are under construction nationwide, employing more than 340,000 Kenyans and expanding opportunities for local artisans and small businesses. We are also expanding pathways for labor mobility through bilateral agreements with partner countries, like here in this great country of Qatar, where over 70,000 Kenyan nationals are proudly working and earning a decent living and contributing to inclusion back at home. In just 3 years, over 400,000 Kenyans have secured jobs abroad, sending home remittances that support families and strengthen our economy. In the digital economy, nearly 2 million Kenyans have been trained in digital literacy, and over 300,000 young people have accessed digital jobs in e-commerce, business process outsourcing, and innovation hubs. Through reforms in health, ladies and gentlemen, the number of Kenyans with medical insurance has grown from 8 million in 2023 to 27.2 million today, ensuring that no one is denied health due to inability to pay. In summary, Excellencies, Kenya's experience affirms that people-centered policies deliver transformative results. Yet, in an interconnected world, national action alone cannot overcome global inequalities. It is therefore incumbent upon us today to stand together with renewed resolve to confront and dismantle the entrenched structures that enable global exclusion and perpetuate inequality. Regrettably, Madam President, I note that this Doha summit convenes at a time when global solidarity is in advancing social development has weakened considerably. 30 years ago, in Copenhagen, the world spoke with one accord and acted with common purpose. Today, however, that sense of shared conviction has significantly dimmed. Faced with new and complex crises, from climate shocks and conflict to unequal trade and debt distress, nations are too often divided by competing interests, inward-looking nationalism, and short-term calculations. We witnessed it in the inequitable distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, in the unmet pledges in the climate finance, and in global systems that privilege power over partnerships. The consensus that once bound us together in Copenhagen is fraying. The world risks retreating into isolation at a time when cooperation should be a priority. Excellencies, as the UN at 80 initiative reforms process unfolds, the time will soon come for all of us to make critical choices about the mandates and structures of the United Nations. In doing so, we must resist the temptation to elevate one pillar of the UN at the expense of others. The United Nations was founded on a holistic vision of delivering global peace and security, human rights, and development. These are the three inseparable, indispensable pillars that together sustain global stability and human dignity. I have no doubt in my mind that while the UN must remain the foremost guardian of global peace, it must also be a catalyst for prosperity and a champion of human dignity everywhere and anywhere. The Doha Summit must therefore renew our shared resolve to act decisively, both as individual nations and as a united global community, to eradicate poverty, create decent work, and advance social inclusion as the surest path towards a world that is truly resilient, inclusive, peaceful, and sustainable. I thank you for your attention.